Okay, this week's reviewer of the week is Selena Suffrant, and she says, "Love this podcast. I started listening to the podcast about 2 weeks ago. I'm 34 weeks into my pregnancy, and it has been so helpful. The highlights for me are definitely the birth stories because it makes birth so much more relatable. In particular, I loved Sally's recent birth story. Her tips, exuberant faith, and infectious energy really transformed my perception of what a natural birth can look like. Please keep up the good work." Thank you, Selena. And I don't know if you have given birth to your baby yet. Yes, you probably have. But this one is also for you. I can't get enough birth stories, whether I'm pregnant or not. So I hope that you guys really enjoy this one. And this one has a special place in my heart because I am going to talk to you a little bit about how I met Lorelei and Jason, and how we kind of connected, and then how that led to her having some really neat births herself. And I'm so grateful that they're both here to share their experience with all of you, about how that's blessed their lives and just a little bit about their birth experience. So Lorelei and Jason, we got a puppy. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago now. We got a puppy a little while ago, and I was panicked thinking, what am I going to do with this dog? I have no training for myself. I don't know how to take care of this dog. And I was looking for trainers locally. So I reached out to Jason, who was in the process of creating a puppy training course, which is now up and ready to go. And people use it all the time. And it's excellent and wonderful. And I'll put a link in the show notes for all of you who are listening. But that started our conversation about online courses because if you're listening, you know that I have an online course, My Essential Birth. And so we started talking about online courses. And from there, I'm going to let Lorelei kind of take over and talk about what happened after. But it led us into a really awesome relationship that we still have today, even as I have moved from Utah and I'm all the way across in Florida now. We still get to connect and be good friends, and I'm so excited to have them here. So if you wouldn't mind, Lorelei, will you jump in and talk a little bit about yourself, your family, all of that, and how you got started with or interested in all the My Essential Birth stuff?
Yes. So it's been such a huge blessing, Stephanie, in so many ways, not just the birth, but the business end of things and
friendship.
It's been a great, great thing. So I won't cry again about the fact that you've moved away. But Jason and I have 8 kids. So these last 2, births number 7 and 8, were ones that Stephanie was a part of. And it totally changed my experience. It was a completely different experience for me than those first 6 births. So I was pregnant with baby number 7, and Stephanie had mentioned that she had this podcast. So I started binging on the podcast. And then that she has this birth course, right? Because Stephanie helped us with our puppy course, like to beta test it and things like that. So here I think I was 8 months pregnant, maybe. Like I was pretty close to the end. And I just kept thinking about Stephanie and just feeling like I need to call her. And so I called Stephanie, ended up hiring you as our doula. And she came over and met with me and did things that are in the birth course, talking over past experiences with birth, all of which I thought were great. I had great experiences, but they were all induced. And I just had no idea that I had this emotional baggage from those births that were hard for me. So she started talking to me about, well, what did you like? What didn't you like? And I start crying. I'm like, oh my goodness, there are some things that still bother me about these previous births. I didn't know that I had so many options when I'm a really good student. You know, they say, here, wear this. I'm like, okay, we're going to do this to you. Okay. I will do whatever you say, I guess, because I just didn't know that I had so many different options. So Stephanie helped me talk through those previous experiences and then to write out a plan of what I would like this next birth to be and what my priorities were. And that was really helpful. And I confided in Stephanie that really, what I really wanted was for everything to have to be dropped. Everybody pay attention. We're having this baby. Like, I'm not going to be hooked up to an epidural and laying in a bed and not able to move for hours and hours and just twiddling our thumbs, waiting for this baby to come. As I didn't expect that would happen, but I said, that would be really cool. I would like that, I think, to just say this baby's happening. Everybody pay attention. So that's what ended up happening. My plan was to think a week overdue, and that's when I would be induced, because I thought maybe I should give my body more time to get ready. I would like to go into the hospital more ready to go, because I would go in to be induced. Often they're like, you're dilated to a 1, maybe, like nothing's happening.
Even
right?
after 6 kids.
Yeah. I would go in and then have to wait for a long time for things. And anyway, I just wanted to see if it could be a better experience for me if I went in a little later and be a little more ready. So Stephanie told me things to help my body to start getting ready. I was doing those things, hoping to, with my mind set on a week past my due date, thinking maybe my body will be more ready if I wait longer. And then 2 days before the baby was due, I woke up at 1:45 in the morning I was like totally sleeping peacefully. Woke up at 1:45 with what I now know is a contraction. I didn't know what those were like. And started I was like, man, I can't calm down. Like, I can't go back to sleep. I was trying to go back to sleep. So finally I started just walking around the kitchen, like, maybe if I move around, I can get a drink, I'll calm down. And when did I sat on the bed, maybe like an hour later, 2:45, something. And Jason's like, what's going on? Are you okay? I'm making noise. and he got up and started chatting with me. And then within a few minutes, he goes, maybe you're in labor. And I was like, nah. This couldn't be.
We always laugh about it because it was our 7th child, and we didn't recognize labor.
Yep.
Like, everyone in the world thinks that we would be like professionals at this by now, but we didn't recognize labor.
Yeah, I'd never done it on my own. In fact, Stephanie helped me realize that I had like a mental block, that I thought that I couldn't or something,
Yeah, every child up to that point had gone overdue.
Yeah. So I was telling people, like, my body just doesn't do it, right? I don't go into labor. So then I was like, you know what? I need to just take a bath. I've heard that can help. That can calm it down. So Jason pours me a bath. I get in, and within 2 minutes, a minute, I'm like, get me out of here. We have got to go.
And I think that's when I got the call from Jason, because he said, well, she's in the bath, and in the background, that's when I heard the like, and I'm like, yeah, she is in labor.
Yeah. So that was a weird thing for me. I'm kind of a quiet person. And I couldn't not make noise. I was like, what is happening?
And I poured a bath for nothing. So we got dressed
as quickly as possible. And of course, I hadn't packed my bags or anything, because I never do, because this never happens for me, right? So my plan that day was to pack my bag. But anyway, none of that was done.
And from my end of it, I was planning on going to a college basketball game with my boys that weekend and staying away from home, because she never has kids before her due date.
Right. So I was like, yeah, you go be an hour away for the weekend. We'll be fine. So glad he wasn't gone for that. So at this point it was 3 a.m. So it had been barely over an hour since I woke up, So I go outside of the house, couple flights downstairs. I'm in the front yard.
I'm trying to gather stuff for the hospital.
Yeah. So he's trying to call Stephanie, call the doctor, we're just coming, I guess, and he's trying to put stuff in a bag, and I just could not. This is also not like me. I'm like, I can't help you, and I'm going. I am out. Like, I don't care. Anyway, so I'm out in the front yard, and all of a sudden I had to go to the bathroom really bad. I felt like, and maybe it was my water break. I don't know what was happening.
Well, this is January in Utah.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Mid-January in Utah. I'm out there in my pajamas, and I was just like, where's a bush? Like, I do not care. I'm not going back up those stairs or anything. But Jason came out.
This is all the great information right here.
I know.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as TMI. This is all
this is
what
real.
women want to
This
hear
is
on the
real.
podcast. Yes.
I remember thinking I could go right there. Wait, there's an outdoor camera right there. Nope. Anyway, kind of wild.
Things to prepare for that you didn't expect.
Go to the bathroom before you leave the house, because you're not going to want to go back up the stairs. So then Jason came out pretty quick, and I'm so proud of him. He was ready to go. Got me in the car. It was 4 minutes to the hospital, right? That's how long it takes us?
Yeah, 4 to 6 minutes.
There's a traffic light to turn into the hospital. It was red. It's in the middle of the night.
3 a.m.
Jason stops. I see no cars, and I'm like, just go.
Oh, yeah, you bet.
So he went through the line.
So I broke the law.
And got me in there. We got through the ER doors just after 3 in the morning. Baby was born at 3:45.
3:25.
3:25.
Yeah, it was 25 minutes after we got to the ER. The baby was born.
So my biggest hopes that Stephanie helped me write up were healthy baby, healthy mom, and then that the doctor could be there and that Stephanie could be there. And I was counting on Jason being there. Thankfully he was. It wasn't later that weekend. And they all made it, right? Stephanie was there. You got there before the doctor did.
The doctor got there with sleep marks on his face.
Yeah.
So he barely made it. And it was so surprising to me, the whole experience. Like, towards the end, it felt crazy. They said, what room do you want to be in? And I knew I wanted the big room with the big tub, whatever. And so they wheeled me in there. And as soon as they're wheeling me in there, I was like, where is the anesthesiologist? They're like,
That's what we'd always done, right? Yeah.
right. And I was mostly thinking, if this is going to be my next 5 hours of life, I don't want it. This is crazy right now. And they said, oh, this room is for those that want to go natural. And I was like, well, get me out of here.
I am not doing this for 5 hours.
Yeah. So they wheeled me into the room next door or whatever. And within 10 minutes, the baby was born.
Yeah.
Something like that. I was like, oh, well.
I always love when a nurse goes to check and she's like, oh, let's see how you are. And then we'll contact your OBGYN. And they check and they say, we're having a baby.
Yeah.
Get him over it. And then just I'll start running.
Yeah. So that was a surprise thing. I got on the bed and they're like, let's check. Oh, we're having a baby. And I was like, oh, what? I also was, oh, wait, what is that called, Stephanie? Whatever positive, the strep. GBS positive. So at that time, they're stabbing me with stuff. They're trying to get the medicine in me, right? And I just remember looking over and seeing blood like on the floor because they're trying to get it in me, And also the oxygen little monitor thing on my finger. They stuck that on. And for some reason, I was like, what is this? What are you putting on me? I don't know. It was just a lot, but it was very quick. And ultimately beautiful. Like, I couldn't believe how good I felt within minutes. The baby was born and they brought, his name is James. They brought James right up to my chest and had him be there for an hour. And I'd never done that before. And it was so awesome. It was just what I had confided in Stephanie was what I really want is a lot of time with me and Jason and the baby, and that we're really paying attention to each other and we're bonding. We have a good experience together. And that we just have to really pay attention to this, let's have this baby and let's focus on this. So we definitely got that, more so than I even expected, in that James actually went into the NICU for a week. And we've never had that before. In fact, when I toured this hospital, it was a new hospital and never been to this one before. So I went and toured it. And they said, oh, the NICU's down there. And I was like, oh, we've never had to use that. So cool, the NICU's down there. I didn't even go and look at it. But we ended up being in the NICU for a week because James had a fever, and it lasted for a certain amount of time, like whatever their protocol is, right? Yeah. And they were like, we need to get medicine in him right now. We don't know exactly what it is, although the doctor told me later it wasn't GBS, or we would have known that, but that he just needed to get some medicine in. And then I didn't know that it's really hard to get a baby out of the NICU because they start monitoring everything under the sun.
We were there for what, about a week?
Yeah.
And it was really, it's weird to say because you'd think that would be there were scary moments because he wasn't really that bad. He was borderline, right? And they were like, this threshold has to be at 20%. He's at 18 or something like that. So it wasn't really that bad, but we look back on it and love it. We love that experience and that time that we had together.
Yeah, it was like Heavenly Father, God was saying, all those things that you said you wanted, this is going to be a gift to you, and I am going to fulfill every single one. All of those little tiny desires that you can barely even voice, I'm just going to check them all off for you this time. And not that that's been my experience every time, but for some reason, there was this beautiful gift of a birth that I felt like God just wanted to love on me a lot right then. And I can't deny it. Like I was in that NICU room, which is the only hospital, by the way, that my doctor delivers at that has individual rooms. So we didn't know that. In the NICU. Yeah. It wasn't just one big room with all the babies. So we had our own little private room with our baby. And I would go in there and hold him and just cry happy tears. Like it was beautiful. And the whole time, even when they said he's sick and whatever, has a fever, or they kept having these little reasons why he needed to stay in the NICU, the whole time I felt really reassured that he was fine. He's going to be fine. Anyway, just a beautiful experience. And I had no idea that people say, oh, when you don't have an epidural, you recover so much quicker. And I was like, who cares? Within 2 hours, I'm walking. So that sounds like a good recovery to me,
Well, and from a husband's standpoint, I'm all for that epidural. I was like, I don't want my wife to hurt. I don't want, her to feel pain. And so, when she's talking about not getting an epidural and things like that, I'm always like, yeah, we'll see. And I'll be there to say, yep, go to the doctor because I don't want her to hurt. But I was also impressed with that. I was surprised at how much quicker the recovery was without it.
Yeah. So I remember distinctly Jason saying to me within hours, I don't know, within the day of his birth, saying, Lorelei, you're acting like you do normally 2 weeks after the baby's born. Like you're feeling that good. And I'm like, yeah, I feel really good. And I knew in the moment, I told Jason at the hospital, I said, this was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. My whole life, just beautiful. If I went back to having my first baby, I still don't know that I would have not done the epidural. Like, I'm glad that is there for us. These babies just came really quick. So it was great. Like, I don't know that I would have wanted to go through 2 days of that, epidurals can have their place as well. I just had no idea that the recovery would be so different and that the emotions of it would be different. I wonder if that medicine coursing through your body affects your so much more than we know, like your mood and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, and we didn't have Stephanie where Stephanie, you were giving us things to do that would help the baby come faster. And I think they worked.
Yeah.
It was magic.
I was like, that's magic. For real, that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. I was impressed by Lorelei and just hearing the past experiences and stuff. And I mean, you never want, I don't know, as a doula and you're in such a vulnerable, sacred space with somebody, you want to give good advice without solid expectations. It's kind of like when we talk about making a birth plan, but we talk about it being a birth map. Like, yes, we all have this like end goal in mind. There's a lot of different ways this could go to get there. And so saying some of those things, like the conversations that we had, and, I'd like if you had your ideal birth, I'd like it to be this way. I want these people here. I want to go into labor on my own. I want to, whatever. You always like hope and are encouraging that those things are going to happen. But I think it was such a blessing for me to just kind of be on the sideline and watching your story unfold and to see how that postpartum happened for you as well, like how you felt looking back on a birth with so much joy. And like you had kind of talked about that contrast, like your other births were beautiful and you were happy with them and you enjoyed them and they were great. And you had so much joy with this experience as well. And I think there's a lot of power that you're giving to women right now who are hearing discussing these things or thinking about these decisions before it's go time, how much we don't realize maybe that those things do matter and they do have an effect throughout pregnancy as well as postpartum, even into the mothering and bonding and shaping of our relationship with our babies and our spouse or our birth partner. So I really appreciate how you just shared that. I don't think, even as you were sharing it, I'm like, I don't know that she realizes the impact that she is going to have by saying what she's saying right now. So I'm really grateful for your story and your spirit and being willing to share that here with everybody. So thank you.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's amazing. It's like you had shared, like this is the most beautiful thing of my life. I mean, I can relate to that. And I know that there are women listening that relate to that too. There's nothing like it. There's nothing that can touch it. And it's such a gift because it's something that, as women, we get to do here on this earth. And some of us get to do it more often perhaps than others. You have this blessing of 8 babies and some will have less, but it's even at that, even with those, like those are 8 moments of your life that are so impactful. So anyways, it's beautiful. It's sacred space. It's vulnerable space. And it has a direct impact on who we are as people here. And anyways, it's really powerful. I love it.
I was going to say there's fond memories that, so like we, every time we go to that light, we joke about just go, like just run the light, and we see that hospital actually. And it's like they're good. The memories come back so much so that I even, a few months later, I took her on a date to the hospital cafeteria.
Yep.
Because we wanted to just be back and remember that they had big windows and you could see the mountains, and we just wanted to remember that moment. So,
yeah, and it was beautiful. And
it could have happened anywhere, but because it happened there, that may sound kind of cheesy, but it's true. Like
I was like, oh, that's perfect, Chase. Yeah. I love this date idea. Yeah. And another thing that I did that I had forgotten, is I called friends. I had 2 people that I could think of that had said they loved giving birth. And I was like, you do? I just wanted the baby at the end, like I was willing to go through birth, not I loved birth. And so I called them and said, why? Tell me why, and just because I wanted to get more in that mental space, like that even is a thing, liking this experience, and the one woman that I called had 7 kids, and she said she had an epidural with every one of them, and she just loved it. She loved She loved that people would bring her food, and she loved this little tradition that she and her husband would do, and they would play games or whatever. She was like, it was just a day to be pampered, and I got a baby out of it, and I loved it, So it was really good for me to take in those experiences as well. Look for the positive ones.
Yeah, I think that's huge. You know that I talk about that on the podcast, but I love that you had people even that you knew that said, I loved birth. And I hope that over time, like we'll hear more and more of that, because that's not often the story. But then to have you reach out and say, hey, tell me why, that's huge. That it has a lasting impact on us for sure. Jason, I wanted to ask you, because prior births and what had been your experience like as the husband with those births versus this, and you kind of mentioned even your thought process behind like, wait, you're not going to get the epidural. Like, no, that's not a good idea. I don't want to see you in pain. So to kind of walk me through that, and then talk to me about the contrast and even which you preferred, or like what advice you'd have to dads that are listening, maybe going through the same thing.
Awesome. So of course, baby number one is always really exciting, but you don't,
and scary.
That's like I say, you don't know what's going to happen, right? First baby was like a 15-hour thing. Second baby was like a 7-hour thing. Third baby was like a 4. And in my mind, because I'm like, let's think logically here, everyone's getting half as, next baby's going to be 2 hours, right? And then that baby was not 2 hours, it was longer.
Big disappointment. The baby wasn't, but that first experience.
It was the first time that the doctor was like, you're good at this, you have plenty, like, what day do you want this baby to be born? And we chose a day, because we always go in to be induced. And so we chose the day, and she came 51 minutes after that day. And so that's why we were disappointed, right?
Yeah.
Because we were like, we picked a day, and you didn't, the baby had other plans. So
yeah.
We had to laugh about that. But as we go through that process, I know she didn't like the epidurals. In fact, Lorelei would often say that's the worst part. Because
receiving it.
Yeah, receiving the epidural and things like that. And I don't like watching that kind of thing either. Like I didn't like her in pain there, and she'd hold my hand and squeeze it really hard. But then after a while, she'd be good. And I love the miracle of life. To me is so beautiful and amazing, and I love it. And I think it's like you say, a sacred space. And it's been that way with every single one of our children, where it's hard to explain because it's so real and so special. From a husband standpoint, I'm all for just like, let's just do the normal thing, whatever normal is, and let's just make it easy.
Let's be on the safe side.
Because
he's the protector, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with these big guns. And that was a joke. So we already joked about this a little bit, but when we talked about like doing different things, like is it dates or prunes? I don't remember which one that you did to
dates.
Help. Dates?
I think.
Yeah. I get them confused, but that's what we started doing, eating dates, and not me, but her. And and I was like, yeah, this is not going to work. This is like old wives' tale, whatever. And yeah. I had to eat my words. They were sweet as dates, but and it was awesome to see that happen and to be part of it. And it was a beautiful experience. And just for me as well, in the NICU, I wasn't worried. Like, it just felt right and it felt good. And a beautiful baby boy was part of that. I think we see it one way and we kind of think that's how it always is. And yet with every child being so different, I think it was good for me to look at things from a different perspective. But that's looking back. I don't know if I would have said that in the moment. It's kind of hard. Yeah. Because you feel like, this is us. And when your wife's saying things like, you know what, maybe I won't get an epidural. I'm like, what, are you crazy? Say no to pain, And and yet at the same time, looking back now, I would say, wow, that was awesome. And when people would say, oh, I did a live birth or something like that, I'd be like, there's a little bit of crazy there, like don't do that. And now looking back, I'm like, I have a better understanding where I would say, you know what, if someone wants to do that, awesome, go for it, go. And I still have no qualms with somebody who wants an epidural. There's nothing wrong with that in my mind either. At least from a husband standpoint. I used to joke with people that I couldn't go through labor without my wife getting an epidural. Right? Like
Turns out you could.
I did twice. And I love both those experiences. In fact, I don't know how much I even remember the other ones. Because most of the time what we did is we would get there and we would wait. And we'd always go get chocolate before.
Yep.
And we got good at schmoozing with the nurses and being like, hey, we got you guys chocolate, so we'd get what we wanted.
Yeah.
That was smart. So I'd highly recommend that one.
Agreed.
Take chocolate for them. And
pick a pound of chocolates.
Yep. And we just offer them chocolate, and then they always took care of us really well. But it was kind of a long thing and a long recovery. And
the hardest part for me was I would be stuck in the bed and for hours, and we didn't know how long it would take. And Jason would be trying to be attentive, but he gets bored.
I was going to say, I'm glad you said the word because I was scared to say it. I get bored.
And so he's over on his phone or whatever, trying to entertain himself.
Trying to look up movies or something we could watch or...
over there, and I'm like, hey. And he's like, well, what do you want me to do? I'm like, I don't know.
I'm trying to be a good husband, but I'm like, I'm here.
Come stare at me, I guess.
But no, it's true. Like I get a little bored and just start thinking about other things and planning and trying and then with the other kids and making sure they're okay and things like that. And so these birth stories they were quicker, so there was really no time for that. But at the same time, the recovery was much more fun. That's maybe the wrong word. I don't know, but it was fun.
I felt better.
Yeah, because she felt better, and then the conversation was all forward thinking. I'm a planner, and so when it's like sitting here waiting for something to happen so all the plans can happen, it's like, let's go. But with the baby there and feeling better, we can move forward. And I really like that. So I love the process each time.
It makes me wonder, Jason, if say that she had another baby and you guys chose induction. Yeah, I know. Don't worry. I know. She just had this other one recently, so we won't do that to her. But just pretend in a fairy tale world, she has this other baby and she chooses to be induced. Do you feel like, knowing what you know now, even though you get bored, you would have things that you could do to support her and be close with her and connect with her rather than, maybe not?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I didn't expect from the doula experience. I didn't expect you to be able to say, hey, come help me. Come do this. This will help her. Push right here. She'll like that. And I
loved that.
And that made a big difference. I would support her in whatever decision she wanted to make there. I would be surprised if she wanted an induction because of the last two experiences. And who knows, it could be totally different.
Right.
But
yes, once I hit 43 weeks, I'm out. Induction, me.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think it's weird I think it's kind of weird from a guy's perspective because we want to support and protect and help you feel comfortable. And yet I think there's also insecurities there. We just don't look at them as much, right? We don't stop and say, you know what, I don't know what to do. So maybe just being here is good. Or I'm nervous and so I'm going to spend my time, looking at things on the phone or
that will distract me,
right? And so looking for distraction instead of taking that nervousness head on. Because that ominous moment, that moment that's going to happen is there. And so I don't know. I think sometimes as guys, we just want to ignore that until we can't anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you shared that because guys get a bad rap sometimes in the birth space for not doing anything. And I think a lot of that comes from you guys are more hands-on. If I can't fix it, what am I to do? And without having a clear direction or information on how to support and to love on your wife during that time, like what she really needs, what else is there to do? So I think for anybody listening today, I think that's an excellent conversation. I hope you have your birth partner listen into this episode today and learn from Jason and just hear that like there is some nervousness, there is some angst, there is some uncertainty that comes around that. And distraction is a tool. You know, we use that in labor for mom. And so realizing that like on both ends, like communication is so important, right? But realizing on both ends, like it's not necessarily, I'm not interested in you. I don't care about this situation right now. I'm going to turn my back and go over here. We're just handling things the way we handle them. And so when we've got that communication and we've got those tools, you guys can work together and have this really neat bonding experience that you love for the rest of your life and get to share with other people. I think that's really important.
Maybe as a specific example, Stephanie, like for me, I would get a little frustrated, like maybe I'd rub her hands or something and she would love it. And then a second later, she was like throwing my hands off, being like, stop it. I'm like, What did I do wrong? I thought I was doing good, you know?
Or I'm like, I'm hot. Get me a fan. That's really cold. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And so you saying things like, you know, she might love it for a minute and then it's, you know, you just kind of fill it out and then move forward. And to hear that from someone else was good because at first I was like, what am I doing wrong? But then to say, you know what, it's just the way things are. And you just kind of, you know, water on a duck's back, you just roll with it.
Yeah.
And that made it so I was like, okay. And then I can go and do something else and help out this way. How does this feel? And it's different each time. Like I think I'd get anxious. I'd hold her hand and I would squeeze. And afterwards she's like, you're squeezing too hard. And I wouldn't even realize I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And so just things like that really made a big difference.
Yeah. And I think the biggest difference if we were to be induced again or something, I think that what would make the biggest difference is if I would voice what I want and if I would take a birth course or something to help me even know what are the possibilities of things that might help, things to try. So I'm not just making up stuff. But if I could say, hey, Jason, will you do this? Hey, can you rub my leg right here? That might feel good. You know, right?
Oui, Capitan.
It often feels good to know what it is that they might even like. You just have to communicate it.
Yeah, I agree. I would love if you guys would jump into your last and most recent birth experience and share a little bit with everybody about that as well.
Yeah, so this summer, we had baby number 8. And so the plan was to not be induced. Whereas baby number 7, I was planning on being induced, just trying to get a little further along, right? But this baby, I was like, you know what? I loved that experience so much. I would love if I could have another one like that.
Something similar.
Yeah, something similar.
We didn't expect it to be as good, right? It's like we were scared to think that way, like, that was so perfect.
Right. So all sorts of emotions. So we anticipated that this baby would come in May. And what was the due date? May 20th?
22nd?
22nd?
20th, I think.
Okay.
I think it was the 22nd. I might still have it in my phone. I'll have to check after.
Something like that. 20-something.
It's such a huge deal, and then you forget. It's so crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Like what the due date is. But then the beginning of May, I was like, whoa, I feel different than I ever have. Like, I feel stuff happening. The baby feels different in me. Like, I might have this baby early.
And I'm like, praise my essential birth.
Yes, we can do this. We're going early, right? So I
was kind of excited to go early again.
I got the My Essential Birth online course and got the book, and we're doing the things because this baby was coming. And I even called my mom and was like, hey, this baby might come early. That was a thing with...
I didn't plan any trips.
Yeah, we weren't going to do that this time. So baby number 7, I had, for the first time, invited my mom to be at the birth, but it was way too fast. She lives 3 hours away. She wasn't able to be there. So I kind of had a hope that maybe my mom could be at this birth. I'd never been comfortable enough with myself to allow anyone else in the birth space besides the hospital staff and Jason.
And part of that may have come from the one time where we're there, I don't know, like baby 4 or 5, and they're like, hey, would it be okay if some people, we got some students here, could they come watch? They need to watch a birth. And Lorelei was like, fine, whatever. And then shuffled in 14 people.
That lined up.
I counted them. There were 14 people. And she was like, oh, great. And then she's like, I hope I never see any of you again.
Yes, I did say that. And they were like,
that's fair.
Anyway, so I had that experience with another one. So we were hoping to have this baby natural, and which is such a funny word to me. Unmedicated. Is that what you say? And doing all of the things, thinking the baby might come early, and then my due date rolls around. And it was hard.
And we all guessed early.
Yeah.
Because that's the new trend, because one baby did it.
Yeah. So this is what's going to happen every time, right? So it was just emotionally difficult it was okay up until the due date. And it's so silly. It's just something in your head, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
it's real.
Yeah. That day came and went was like, what? Okay. So each day was a mental battle.
And then we all re-guessed the date.
Uh-huh.
And that came and went.
Yes. And so Stephanie really, really helped me through this part. So it
was a big mental game.
It was. And I really think if I didn't have Stephanie's support, I would have been induced, because I would have said, let's just do it. Right. But every time I thought about being induced, which was an option, I could have done that. I felt like a knot in my stomach. Like, no, don't do it. I don't want that, but then holding out was difficult. So
12 days later,
Stephanie took me on a walk.
She's like, we're going for a walk. Let's go.
Yeah. And I was feeling
a really good walk.
I was like, well, Stephanie, let me finish this little TV show first.
And to mention that Lorelei's parents, her mom called the night before and was like, you know what? I'm coming. I'm just going to come. Even though and she wasn't, since the due date, hadn't really felt any movement. It was like, nothing's going on.
I mean, we felt movement from the baby, but not like,
things were the labor progressing.
Well, and if I can interject just for a moment, but you had, I think it was after your due date, and you had a vaginal exam at one of your appointments, and it was like everything was closed off, not ripe. Bishop's score was like a nothing, like your body just wasn't doing it. And then like another week later, or however, like this, because I think you had your appointment just a day or two, or was it that day that you had your appointment? And
it was that day.
That
he was
day.
Born.
And you were super ripe. You were however many centimeters dilated. Like things were happening, and it was like, you're gonna have a baby. Yes, you will have a baby.
Yes.
So you had some encouraging things that showed your body was getting ready.
I think those appointments were 2 days apart, if I remember right.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
So, because he started to have me come in for stress tests or whatever. So I had refused any vaginal checks before, mostly because they were discouraging. Like, what was the point? Yeah, you're telling me that I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, I could have told you that, So I just avoided having them. And then until my doctor was like, we are so far overdue, he's like, I would appreciate if we could check. And he didn't push before at all, which was awesome. But when we're so far overdue, like he wanted to make sure that we were all good, that the baby was safe, whatever. So we had that vaginal check for my first time, and it was 2 days before he ended up being born. pretty sure. And he was basically like, yeah, you had nothing. Nothing's happening. Tried to be encouraging about it, but it was difficult to hear that. And then 2 days later, he said, you're dilated to a 2 and super soft, or I think is what he said, something like that. Which to me, even though I've listened to all your podcasts and gone through the first one, I was like, ugh. Because you just hear 2 and that's really far away from 10.
Yeah.
I called Stephanie, I called you, and you were like, ooh, that's good. I'm like, it is? Just that the super soft part,
Right.
And he ended up coming that night. So that from that vaginal check that morning, then you were like, well, do you want to get things going today? Do you want to do some more things, So going on the walk, drinking the nasty drink, which wasn't all that nasty until I had it the second time.
Yeah, she's talking about castor oil.
Yeah, the Midwives Brew.
The Midwives Brew. I'll link or I'll put the Midwives Brew, the recipe in the show notes for you guys.
Yeah.
And it was super helpful. So on this, I think it was either the podcast or on on Instagram or something, that you posted some things and had people give support, and that made a big difference for Lorelei to be able to say, these people saying, I went over this much and this is the experience I had. And it just meant a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Oh, good. And for those that are listening on Instagram, you can find this. It's in my, I don't know, those little bubbles that are in my profile. It says past due ? Yeah. Cause I was posting, and you guys might remember if you follow on Instagram, I was posting real time and saying, hey, I have a mom that's overdue. Well, this is the mom. I wasn't saying who it was or anything. And I'm like, she needs some encouragement. Send it this way. And it was like mom after mom after mom that was like, yes, I had this. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
It was really cool to have that community of people supporting. Because again, as a husband, I'm like, hang in there, sweetheart.
Right.
Like, what I have, what?
And he's such a planner too. He was like, well, if the baby comes this day, then this. And I'm like, I can't make the baby come.
I've got my 7 different plans,
Yeah. Every day was a new plan.
And he actually went past all my plans, and it worked out. The funny thing is looking back, it worked out more than perfect. Like, it was the right time. Right. It was the right time for him to come. And there's a whole bunch of things we could talk about with that, but where it needed to happen when it happened.
And we couldn't have known.
Yeah, and things we couldn't have known. So it was the right time.
Yep. So, Stephanie, you can tell them about our walk.
I laughed so much because there's a text that you sent me postpartum that said something about, why don't we go on a walk and you can bring your water or something like that.
Yeah,
I have to screenshot it.
Overdue. And Stephanie's like, okay, let's go on a walk tonight to start things off, right? And bring your water. I'm like, bring your water? Like, it's going to be that much of a walk? And it was.
Yeah,
How
it
far
was.
Did we go?
I don't know. It was a decent walk though. I don't know if I tracked it on my watch or not. I think I did. We went over a mile.
Yeah, it was miles. 2 miles, 3 miles. I don't know.
I don't know that it was that much, but we went well over a mile. It might have been 2.
Yeah, I think it was about 2.
Stepping up on curbs and things like that.
We did a lot of curb walking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we walked uphill into where there were trees and nature, and there's something behind that as well. I think I was talking to you about it as we were doing it. Yeah.
Yep. And nothing was happening when we started, but then by the end, I couldn't talk when there was a contraction, right? I'm like, wait, slow, okay, let me just, it's over, right? And stuff was happening. And then we got back to my place, and you were going to show me some positions to do on the yoga ball. And I remember the yoga ball was out in the van for some reason. So we went to go get it. And I remember one of my friends texting me and saying, I just realized that I totally missed your due date and stuff. I hope your birth experience was great. I'm excited to hear your story. And I texted back. I'm like, yeah, me too. I'm excited to find my story. And she just was so sure that the baby would have come already. So that text came in at 9 p.m. as I went out to get that yoga ball, right? And you had me smell some certain things and do
Clary
one
sage
position.
oil. Yes.
Yeah. I did. Sat on the ball basically and was like, oh, that contraction, like I felt like I should push. Okay, it's time to go.
And I love it. So I was in the basement with the in-laws watching the show because Lorelei and Stephanie were doing their thing. And Stephanie came and said, hey, could you come up and help for a little bit? And so I came up and I see them in the front room with the yoga ball. And no joke, when I saw her, I was like, oh, like, are we having a baby right here? Like, this is labor. I know this. I remember this. And so I remember thinking, that rug is not going to survive. That was my first thought. And then I thought, you know what? It's just a rug. It'll be good. If we're doing this, we're doing this. Right? Stephanie's here. It'll be great. And then she's like, well, let's get ready and let's go. And I'm like, okay. So we started packing things up as quickly as we could.
Yeah.
And
he was scared about the baby coming here because I had kept talking about having a home birth. Like, maybe we should just have the baby at home because there were all these COVID restrictions, whatever. But it just barely opened up to be exactly what we needed it to be right before the baby was born. But if my kids weren't going to be able to come in and meet the baby at the hospital, I wanted to have the baby at home.
Right.
So anyway, so that's why he was like, oh boy, are they trying to do this at home? Is this what's happening?
I was not part of this conversation, but here we go.
So I hurried and got changed. And that's where Stephanie says she knew I was in transition because I didn't care that she was there to help me get changed. I'm like, well, yep, let's do this.
Yeah, I think we had talked about that before and you were like, I'm a little more like modest. I feel comfortable, a little more covered. And I'm like, oh yeah, me too. Yeah, and you went to the bathroom and got up and the slowness of like movement. So like once mom starts moving real slow, you're like, uh-oh, if we're going to go to the hospital, we should do that quickly. But yes, it was like that. I don't care. Get this off me. I have to get my robe on. And I'm like, oh, you guys have to go now. And I think there was a point upstairs where I was like, okay, we're going to have one more contraction and we're going to get in the car. And I think everybody kind of clicked in at that moment that like, we've got to go now because it was this slow movement and every couple steps and we'll have a contraction. And I was like, you guys are going to have this baby at home. Of course, I didn't say that out loud, but a little bit of urgency.
Yeah. There was definitely urgency because I started feeling like I needed to push. And I'm like, oh man, this is coming fast. So
we got in the car and as luck would have it, there was construction. So it's going to take 8-10 minutes to get there instead of the 4 to 6.
Yeah. And I'm having contractions in the car. And yeah, the car is the most uncomfortable part because I like wanted to straighten out so bad. And my mom was able to go with us, so she's in the back seat. And she went into the ER ahead of us, like Jason dropped her off right by the door.
Did I run the red light? I think I ran the red light.
Oh yeah, I said just go.
I just went. I know my job.
And we got in there. My mom went in ahead of us because I was slow, like you said.
Yes.
And she said, my daughter's right behind me, and she is in labor. She's in full labor. And she said that they were like, okay.
Oh, yeah, we'll see.
Let's write this down. Tell me your name. And she's like, Lorelei. Like, trying to get him to go fast. And then as soon as I walked in the door, they were like, oh, let's get her upstairs.
That's where labor and delivery is. And we got to labor and delivery, and they have a locked door there, too, that you have to buzz in. And we buzzed in and like, my wife's in labor, let's go. And they're walking down the hallway.
And I'm like having full contractions out there. I'm like, hold it in.
And the poor girl that was willing the wheelchair, I think she was just a helper. And you could tell she was getting nervous. She's like, I don't know how to deliver a baby. And so then they open the door and they're like, can you fill out these forms? I'm like, really? So I tried to hurry and fill out forms. And after then she went into a contraction and they were like, actually, you can fill those out later.
Yep. And that was the point that I got in the wheelchair. Before that, I was pushing it. Like I didn't want to sit down, but I was like, you've got to get me there fast. So I sat down and she starts running down this hallway, right? And I feel the breeze. I was like, oh, that's good. She booked me down the hallway and we got in that end room that I really wanted to be in.
Yep. We buzzed in at 10 p.m.
And the baby was born at 10:04.
So we got to that room. They got her in the bed. And they said, oh,
well, I stood up and I was like, there's my water.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, right. I've never experienced that. I've never felt, I don't know. When baby number 7 was born, I guess it just happened at the same time or something. Anyway, so water broke. I got up on the bed and had a contraction and the baby was there or something.
Yeah.
I was trying to hold off for Stephanie to come, but couldn't do it. For the first time, I had wanted to have like a videographer or a photographer there. I'm just realizing that all those first births, I wasn't as empowered in my body. Like I was more nervous about things, more private, and not seeing it as such a beautiful experience, more of something I had to get through to get the baby. So that was something that was a big mental shift for me, was seeing it as a beautiful thing, as an empowering thing, even a spiritual thing, having this baby. So I wanted to record it, knowing how much baby number 7's birth meant to me. And the videographer, there was no way she was getting there. It was way too fast. And so my mom, I said, give her the video camera. Because Jason, I had been able to communicate that I really wanted that. I wanted a video or pictures, whatever. And so Jason handed my phone off to my mom, who just held it off to the side as she watched. One of the cool things was was really special to me was Jason said during the birth, he looked over at my mom and she was just sitting there crying, watching, and I was so grateful to be able to have her there. I'm the youngest of 10 kids, and most likely that was her last grandbaby. And so I'm just really grateful that she was able to be there for the experience. It was neat. And then Stephanie and my doctor came in later. A few minutes after the baby was born.
So let me say, Lorelei and I live would you call it, like a block from each other, 2 streets from each other? Yeah. Like we're ridiculously close. And when they jumped in the car, I was like, I'm sweaty. We were just on this long walk. I have to go change and put my regular clothes on, or like change out of these clothes and put deodorant. Like I have to go grab my doula, but I just need to like run home and get this stuff and head out. And I mean, I was minutes past when you guys got there and it was too late. Like by the time that I got up to the elevator and pushed the button, and no one was at the station because they were all helping Lorelei have a baby. So we were like waiting there for a couple of minutes and I knew for sure like what was happening, and then all of a sudden I see a nurse running towards me and I'm like, I'm here for whatever. And she like, last room on the right. And I go booking it down there and it was too late. But yes, the baby was there. And, so that's how quickly that went down. Yeah, that was pretty incredible.
Yeah. I remember being surprised looking down and seeing the whole baby. Like there was one push and it was like, I can't not push, and the baby was there. Like, blah, blah. Anyway, yeah. Crazy. I guess Jason said doing it again, he would have been like telling everybody along the way, this is baby number 8. She's in labor. Like, say that it's right. Not baby number 1 or 2,
Right.
This could be fast.
Yeah.
So then again, they did the bringing the baby to my chest and all of that. It was beautiful, wonderful. It was fun to have my mom there.
Yeah.
And just, overall more empowering experience. Within an hour, I'm standing up, taking pictures with the baby. And anyway, it was great. Recovery was great again. Within a month and a half of having the baby, I think I had more postpartum depression than I've ever experienced before. So that was new. Every baby is just a new experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And working right now on working on that, but just like with when I went overdue with the baby, so important to reach out for help. I'm so glad that you were open, Stephanie, to me being like, this is hard. And you reached out and helped me. And those women saying about their experience, how they went a week or two overdue and that it ended up, the baby came, they eventually
Right.
come, and that it was all good was really helpful. So
Yeah.
trying to do that same thing now, reaching out for help to get feeling better again. Right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Jason stepped away. For those of you who are listening, he had to take care of their sweet little baby who just woke up, and he's feeding him now. But I want to thank you and Jason. Please give him my thanks and my regards for being here and sharing your story. And I think what I love most about it is the strength. And like I had said before, like the impact that you're having on other women just by telling your birth story. And I shouldn't even say just, like, by sharing your positive birth story. So I feel so blessed to have been a part of that, being in that sacred space with you. And I mean, you can't help it. Like when you're in that space with somebody, you're bonded forever, So I have a special place in my heart for you, and I'm sure you feel the same about me. And what a blessing that is to share that together. So thank you for all of that.
Yeah. Get a doula. It's awesome.
Could not agree more.
Yep. And do the birth course. It also is awesome.
Yeah.
So
Thank
just
you.
any knowledge. It changed my life for sure. Like I feel different about myself and about life in a positive way from those experiences. So thank you, Stephanie.